He gets one high in the air. Left field, this one's got a chance. And let's go on a cowhide. Joyride. Sound the horn. The RailCats clear the yard.
Hello, RailCats fans, and welcome back to another edition of RailCats Talk Podcast. I'm Kyle Savedich, and this will be the series review of the Cleburne Series, the 6 games that lasted down there in the Pasta Bowl, La Madera Pasta Bowl, down there in Texas. Was the fear that I had going into the series kind of came true. The biggest fear, my fear, was that the RailCats were going to lose all 6 games. And it kind of felt that way going into the first game, losing 12-4. And the common theme here is the RailCats were down 6-0 in the first 2 innings. Keep that noted throughout the series that when we throw through this. Ty Tiedemann started the game. He went 4 2/3 innings, gave up 8 hits, 9 runs, all earned, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. Offensively, Basabe was the only one to drive in 2 runs on 1 hit, which was I don't remember the time. I think it was a RBI double. And then, oh my bad, Rincon and Castillo all had RBIs in that game as well. Nothing to really quote. And offensively, they had 5 hits, 4 runs, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts. Getting into game 2, they ended up winning 12-5 as Andres Diaz was on the mound for the RailCats. And the thing to note out of this situation is that the RailCats didn't give up more than 3 runs, and they didn't give more. They didn't give up 3 or more. They gave up 2 in 2 innings, the second inning and the 8th inning. But that, like, to take that noted is that there wasn't a consistent inning where a big blow up, and the RailCats were able to pull that. They were up 7-0, and Cleburne kind of fell apart in that aspect. Andres Diaz comes in. Now, he didn't have the performance he did last week against the Monarchs, but he went 5 innings. He gave 6 hits, 3 earned, 3 walks, and 1 strikeout. Nothing to really, he has been the most consistent outside of Peyton Long that has been in the starting rotation. If you look at his past 3 starts, his first start, he only went 4 innings, and he gave up 2 earned runs, but 3 runs, 2 earned, 4 hits in 4 innings, and 3 walks and 5 strikeouts. Like, the walks are a little bit alarming to a certain extent, but really this team has been plagued with issues with walk. But he has been that consistent. If you're going to give me 4, 5, 6, and if he gave us 7, I think he could go 5, 6, depending on how his pitch count is going to 7. But if he's pitching the way he has, and he's a younger pitcher, and he has a lot of promise to himself, so I think there's a lot to go off of Diaz in this situation. But if he's going to give us 3 runs every outing, if that's what he's going to give us, I'm fine with that. The rest of the ball club is just going to have to figure it out, because this is what you're wanting from your starting pitcher, someone to go 5, 6 innings and just the amount of giving up runs but getting out of certain situations is a big key here. But that's the big note realistically in this situation. Noted, Quintana had a double, Castillo had an RBI, Del Valle had a home run, his first. I think it was a 3-run shot. That, that's a positive to take away from that situation. Everyone that got an RBI was Diaz. Del Valle had 4, Basabe, Gonzalez, LG, Quintana had 3, and then Valera. So that's the big thing. Now we get into probably the next 2 games really being the worst 2 games for the RailCats. The Thursday game is one that us fans want to get out of our head. That was Sanabria, who pitched 1 inning, gave up 7 walks, 7 earned runs, 2 hits. Ian Walda came in. He gave up 9 runs, 8 walks. Panazzi came in. He gave up 6 walks. It was just a terrible game pitching-wise. And there was nothing that you are not going to convince me otherwise out of this game that that life out of the offense was sucked out in those first 2 innings, because you come off scoring 2 runs from a Marcos Gonzalez double, scoring Basabi and Rincon off of an error that kind of ignited, and then you just have pitching issues after pitching issues. Like, that's just not going to help in that circumstance. It's just going to deflate everyone out of that situation. So this is one of those games that you just kind of chalk up and let it go. So going into yesterday's game, or Friday's game, I should say, the 18-3 loss. This was one of those situations where, again, okay, you go down by 3 runs. Your offense isn't necessarily clicking right away, but there's potential there. But you're down 8-0, 11-0 through 4 innings, and then you score 3 more. You give up a run, and then the last 2 innings were just you give up the 3 more. Like, you see that the concurring moment that is when the RailCats are starting to give up more than 3 runs in an inning at one point in time. More than likely, things aren't going to happen. I mean, the Cleburne gives up the 3 runs in the 5th, but that really doesn't mean anything because they were already up at that point 11-0. So there's nothing there to like throw the red flags into the in a certain circumstance. I mean, like I said, a lot of the series was the really one bad inning from either team kind of exploded into more than what it needed to be. The case in point of yesterday's game on Saturday, this was probably the closest and best game out of both teams up until the end, realistically. I mean, you can take into account today as well. But these last 2 games were probably the best 2 games in the series that you kind of see the things that this roster is capable of, what the pitching staff could be capable of. Peyton Long comes in and he gives you 5 strong innings, giving up 1 run that wasn't even earned, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, like dominant. And then Julio Pinto comes in and he gives up 2 runs, but then Valdez gets the win. Smith and Alexander come in and they have shutdown innings, not giving up a walk, striking out 2 and 3. That's the type of thing that you need to see, and everyone in the lineup was hitting. Besides, I think Buckley's the only one that didn't get a hit, but he had a walk, so he was on base. Everyone got on base in this game, and everyone got on base at least once. Even if it was just a walk. You have 16 hits, but the issue still. I mean, but I shouldn't even say the issue is still alive because this was a better game as far as Del Valle had a double, LG Castillo had a double, Valera had 2 doubles in the game. Got Marcos Gonzalez hit a home run. Carlos Rincon hit the grand slam to really seal the deal. Like, these were sorts of things, and Diaz stole 2 bases in this game. So that's like one of those situations where the offense was producing at the level that we think they should. Hitting the doubles, hitting the home runs. Gio Diaz stealing bases that he needs to be doing. I mean, he only has 8 on the year, and last year he broke the record, and he was close to breaking the record halfway through the year. And he slowed down a little bit because I think at times he kind of got caught stealing. But this is one of those games that you look and really not until the 8th inning. I mean, it was tied going into the 8th inning, or no, actually Cleburne was up 3-2 going into the 8th inning, and then the RailCats just dumped it on him, scoring 8 in the 3rd and 9 in the 4th. Like, that is a situation where we know this team, the offense is it's odd because the offense is either coming out of the gate swinging and tends to slow down, or they're kind of slow out of the gates and then they build themselves up, and that's when they start scoring runs. I know this isn't really the case in point in today's game, to a certain extent, but it's one of those situations where Ty Tiedemann gets tagged with the loss, but this was his best start, hands down. Best start. I mean, his first start, even the game, his first start of the season with Chicago, where he didn't get the loss, but they lost 5-8, or 8-5, however you want it. When you read it the way the results are, it's 5-8, but I got complained at by that one, but that's beside the point. My point is you pitch a 4 and a third inning, and you give up 3 runs on 5 hits, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. Like, that's not terrible. I mean, even going into the second, I mean, the issue is a lot of the times, except out of the King County, the May 3rd, and the Cleburne game where everything just fell apart for him, he's been averaging 3-4 runs a game. And then tonight, by far, he pitches 6 innings, gives up 1 run on 5 hits, 2 walks, 1 strikeout, and he gets himself out of a handful of jams. And it's like one of those, like, that's the time the offense really needed to be there to pick this pitcher up, because he did pitch a good game, a stellar game. And this was one of those ones where the offense, or not the offense, the pitching staff gave you what you needed, but then the hitting wasn't there. And that seems to always be the issue, is what we're lying ourselves with. But then we go into the issue of, case in point, you go into the 7th inning and you give up 4 runs. You go into the 8th inning and you give up 4 runs, and you end up losing the game 9-1, when really the game could have just ended 1-0 at that point. Because or it could have been tied 1-1 because he ended up scoring in the 8th. From a Gio Diaz double. Like, that's just the part that kind of sucks, is that, and to be honest with you, I knew that Sanabria was coming into the bullpen, but that was not that if I'm going to ever mark up a blemish, however everyone wants to argue this is one of those calls this year that I really looked at Lamar Rogers and I said, really? Carlos Sanabria? After the horrific performance that he showed in the third game of this series, you're going to put him in a 1. I understand that I understand this is going through a leash process to a certain extent, right? And you cut him from the starting rotation. He's out of the starting rotation. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. He's out of the starting rotation. If he was still in the starting rotation, he wouldn't have pitched today. It just wouldn't have happened. And so you're like, okay, well, I still have to have some kind of belief in you. So I'm going to put you in a 1-0 game. And you pitch a 3rd inning, give him 3 hits, 2 runs, and 1 strikeout. I'm sorry, but that leash is going. Now you're into the atmosphere of, more than likely, if it's a blowout game, you're probably going to get in there, or we just need someone to go a handful of innings, and we just don't really know where we're at in that situation. Like, here you go. I think, Denton Hall coming in, him giving up 5 runs on 5 hits in 1 inning, and I think the Sanabria runs came in after Hall. There's just something not clicking in the pitching staff. Like, this is one of those games that everything should have just kind of. I understand your offense wasn't there supporting you, but this isn't one of those games. It hasn't been like all season where it's like, you know what? This was just a fluke for the pitching staff, and as normal, the offensive side wasn't there. That's not what the case is. It's the case of when the offense is there. Realistically, the offense of this team is hit or miss. I know what I discussed this in the last podcast. The team's hit or miss on their offense. If they had outstanding pitching, which they haven't, and that's not hard to see. really outside of a handful of people, you can say everyone else just isn't pulling their own weight. And that's just the natural the nature of the beast. And as bad as it may sound, I hate doing this as like trying to tear a bunch of people down, because I don't want that to happen. I'm not that person that wants to just pick apart everyone on this team. This isn't MLB teams. We're not talking millions of dollars, thousands of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars invested in players and them not pulling their weight. Like, these players are trying to make a name for themselves, and it goes with the coaching staff as well. Everyone's trying. It's not like people are not trying. Okay? And I don't want to sit here and go, well, you kind of suck, get out. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to be that person where I'm the one being the quote unquote bad guy, or quote unquote being the one that's harsh and saying that these players can't play. I'm not saying that they can. It's just the pitching staff hasn't helped themselves in winning games. And when the games are tight and the pressure gets bigger, and the pressure is there, we just crumble under the pressure because we let anger, bad calls, or errors bite us. Like, not everything to blame on the pitching staff, but this was one of those games where it's like, you had the defense. The defense was there. I think they had no errors on either side. In this last game, Jose Contreras made a heck of a play. Ty Tiedemann had a heck of a play. Basabe had hecks of plays there. Like, everyone defensively was pulling their weight. Offensively, okay, you only had 5 hits. You had the 1 run. Like, okay, that's tough. I know when I think Denson, when he came in, he gave up the 5 hits. Like, they weren't like hard hits. I think it's outside the home run that he gave up. But it's like, those kind of things happen. Like, the luck's just not there for the RailCat side of things. But yet again, you have 5 strikeouts versus the 3 strikeouts. You only have 2 walks versus the 3 walks, and you get the 5 hits. Like, that's just the part is you're getting the production. So, like, Diaz has 2 hits in the game. Basabe has 2 hits in the game. Marcus Gonzalez has a hit in the game. But, you're not getting that production from anyone else in the lineup. And sometimes that's just going to happen. It's just, this game, it was a hard-fought, quick 2.5-hour game. The quickest game of the series. Most of them went to 3 hours or longer. But this was one of those, like, it's just like, you could have really gone away with the series split here. And we're looking at a 4-2 loss. And that's just, there's nothing. It sucks. Really, it really does. I feel bad for ripping into the pitching staff, because it's just not the pitching staff alone. I mean, some of this has to go with the hitting, but when you keep giving up the 4, 5, 6 inning run, or giving up 4, 5, 6 runs in an inning, it just deflates everything. Right? It was a good, close battle. The offense just wasn't. They were, you only had really 5 strikeouts in the game. Like, that's not terrible. It's not everyone was striking. I mean, the people that struck out only struck out once. So that's just telling you that most of the time you're hitting the ball and it's just not going your way. And that's baseball. That happens. It does. Because the funny part is if you play, I know this is, we're talking video games here, but it's just one of those, this is how crazy baseball is general in a sport, right? So if you play MLB The Show, even if you put on the easiest difficulty, I guarantee you there are going to be games where you're not going to hit the ball out of the ballpark every time. You're not going to hit the ball every time. Unlike other sports games Where majority of the time, like if it's 2K or if it's NHL or if it's Madden, you put on the easy difficulty, you're scoring every time. Like I'm not saying that like MLB the Show, like you're going to, it's not saying that you're not going to do that. I'm just saying that majority of the time in baseball, you can hit the ball perfect and you're going to get out. So that's why it's so hard to a certain extent to say that the hitting staff, the hitting side of things hasn't always been there. No, because the numbers show it. When you look at the league averages and everything else along the line, they're just not there. This team is not. This team's not what we thought it was going to be, right? That's why it's so hard to make predictions. That's why it's so hard to hype people up, because baseball is such a humbling sport that one year you can be really good and the next year you just might not have your stuff. It happens. It's hard to be really consistent and really good in baseball. And those players that are really good and really consistent in this league are more than likely going to be picked up and moved on. DNA Olivero is one of those players. I think he's doing really good in the Mexican League. I haven't looked at his numbers, but I still have an Instagram. He seems like he's doing really good. So that's one of those people where it's like the consistency, the good is going to be taken. And, you know, I've already kind of discussed what I feel is necessarily wrong in the lineup. And I really think that when you look at this roster, there's not enough left-handed bats in this lineup, and yet again, your bench isn't deep. Outside of, you know, like Jacob Bockley, the bench numbers just aren't there. You know, Bockley's batting a 209, which is your top bench guy at this moment. Miguel Sierra is an everyday player before he got hurt, but he's batting 120. So I'm taking him out of this equation here. But Bockley's batting a 209. Carlos Rincon is batting a 212. Like, that's your next, that's your bottom everyday player is Rincon, and Bockley is only 3 points behind him in that aspect of it. Then you get to Brandon Fields, Galeno, and Contreras. Brandon Fields is only batting a 190. Galeno's batting a 154, but he's only had 13 plate appearances. This should have been. This is where I kind of get a little confused. Okay, so not saying that today's game that Quintana played a terrible game, because he threw out 2 runners, and when you look at the whole Cleburne series in general, he had six hits. But you know, only drove in 3 runs, and that came into the 12-5 loss, or 12-5 win that they had. Great, you're getting hits, you're scoring. So he scored 4 runs in the entire series, right? And he had 1 double, and that was the 12-5 win. Not saying that you take him out of the lineup to a certain extent. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm trying to say is, okay, we know what we're gonna get out of Jose Contreras, right? And he's a right-handed batter, right? We know that he has some power to him. He had 2 home runs in 1 game, and that was in King County in a loss 6-9. And you know, he played in 3 games in the Cleburne Series, and he had 1 hit out of 7 appearances, scored 1 run, and 3 strikeouts. He's batting right now at 152. You know, a Mike Galeno who really hasn't, you know, what I'm trying to get at. This would have been a perfect example of Contreras had a little bit of a rough spell. It's been hot down in Cleburne. You have to have a nice rotation at the catcher's position. And, you know, Galeno gets in at 2 games, and he got in, and the June 6th game when it was a complete blowout. And I understand he went 0 for 3 with, 2 strikeouts, where the case may be. But are you just relying, like, he would have just been someone to give Quintana a break, but Quintana can also still be in the batting line, be in the batting order in this, in this situation. Sometimes I don't understand the substitutional uses or the players that you move around here and there. Like, you have a backup catcher for a reason. Use them, especially on hot days, or not on hot days. Like, you have a hot day and then you want to give him a break. Like, I think that's still, you don't want to wear, Quintana down. I'm not saying that Quintana's been terrible. He hasn't. I mean, he gets hits. I'm glad he's hitting the ball. But there's more. That has to be more to it, right? And that's what I feel like what's happening is, I think, you look at the top right now, top 3, but Castillo and Diaz are tied with their batting at 259. We only have 2 players that are over 300, or are at 3 or over, and that's Basabe at 303 and Gonzalez at 300. Realistically speaking, right now, and this was a question I was thinking to myself. I said, who are we going to send to the All-Star game, right? I think majority of everyone has to have at least send one player to go. In my head, I'm like, who are we going to send? Now, you could probably send someone for the pitching side. If you're looking at it, you could send a Yohan Valdez. If realistically, Nate Alexander's pitched very well. He has a 2.18 ERA, but like Anders Diaz, if he continues to pitch really well, or if a Peyton Long if he continues to pitch really well, I think outside of the one rough game that he had where he gave up 6 runs to Lake Country, 6 runs, he's given up, other than the Sioux Falls game where he gave up, 4 runs, but he's given up 2, 0, or 1. It's like, it's one of those situations where, like, the 1 run he gave up against Cleburne, it wasn't an earned run, so that doesn't go against him. He took in his ERA at one point that was 1080 and brought it down to a 504. If he continues to be, if he continues to pitch well, he could be an all-star. If Anders Diaz decides he's going to keep, if he keeps pitching well, he could be in the all-star race. But I'm looking at the batting side and I go, who would we send? And right now, it's really a big toss-up between Marcos Gonzalez and Olivier Basabe, because when you look at their stats, so Basabe has 9 more at-bats than Gonzalez does, and they both play the same amount. They both have scored 18 runs. Basabe has 33 hits. Gonzalez has 38. Gonzalez has 5 doubles. Basabe has 6. Gonzalez has 5 home runs versus Basabe's 3. RBIs, Gonzalez has 17 and Basabe has 13. Walks is 12 for Gonzalez and 10 for Basabe. Strikeouts, Gonzalez strikes out 2 more times at 16 versus Basabe at 14. Like, your infield, because Diaz is above 250 now, and he's starting to kind of turn the corner, as he has now 30 hits, 8 doubles. He has 12 RBIs, 5 walks, 13 strikeouts. I think the strikeouts a little bit more than he necessarily wants, but he's starting to heat up a little bit. Castillo is starting to get back into a rhythm of things. I know, I don't think he had a hit in this game. Like, he went 0 for 3 with a strikeout, but that's, you're going to go through those ebbs and flows. You're not going to get out and hit every, they're starting to come around. I really think the offense is starting to come around. Once everything clicks, everything gets going, everyone's hitting the ball, we're going to see more of it. But the matter of the fact is the pitching staff going to stay on? Basically, what I'm getting to, I went away from the All-Star portion of it. At this point, it's so hard to say who I would give it to, because I think of Marcos Gonzalez and I think, oh, he's batting really well. He's been driving in runs. He's not the RBI leader, but he's getting on base. He's scoring runs. But then I sit there and I go, Basabe, man, he's been making plays at third, and he's batting really well. Like, it's one of those situations. It's hard to decide between the two who I would necessarily send. So what I'm getting to is, if you guys were to send, if we're gonna send, let's just say if we're gonna send a pitcher and a batter, who would you guys would want to send? Let me know who you would send, and give me a reason why you would send them to the All-Star game. And I don't want the we shouldn't send anyone because we suck. You're right. We shouldn't send anyone because they have a losing record in the bottom of the barrel. That's not the point. There are some players on this team that have shown in and shown out every night that do deserve recognition. So when you go down to Kansas City or you're watching the All-Star game, you have at least one person represented. Like, there's a positive to that. You have to reward the players that are actually being productive on team to make the All-Star team, even if the team itself isn't succeeding. The All-Star game isn't really about the teams, it's about the players that are on the teams. So I want to avoid that. Oh, well, they suck anyway, so why should we send them? I don't want that. If I see that, I'm ignoring it or I'm taking it off the comments, because that's not what that question is about. But I just want to know who you guys would want to send to the All-Star game, a pitcher and a batter. And give me you don't have to give me a reason, but give me a reason why that may deter or may switch me of thinking, because realistically, it's so hard. But I think at this point, offensively and defensively, I would have to give it to Basabe, because he's just been that good this year. So, yeah, I think that. Oh, I guess I didn't get into I was trying to keep this under 30 minutes, but I got one little rant. So when we look here at the division standings, the RailCats are 9-19, 7.5 games back. Cleburne has jumped to first in the East Division after 6 games with the RailCats. They are 12-17. Kane County is behind them a half game at 16-12. Milkmen, who we are going to see next, are 15-12, a game back. The Dogs are 13-14, 3 games back. Lake Country Counts are 10-18, which is 6.5 games back. So we're still there behind behind Lake Country. Like, hey, we're still here. Like, y'all aren't doing any better than we are. Like, we're still here. So that's gonna be interesting. But looking at the Milkmen, looking at their previous series, which was against Winnipeg, they dropped 2-3, so they're on a losing streak before coming to the Steelyard. They were just coming off of a 4-game winning streak, sweeping the Dogs, but nonetheless, here and there. When we look at the stats leaders, he only played in 1 game. I'm looking for people that have played. Well, he's only played 1 game, and Myers has a 500 batting average. Law has only played in 5 games, has a 375. The longest person, Cirmo's back, so that's always going to be interesting when he's back. He's batting at 310, has 5 home runs, 10 RBIs. Marrero, he's batting at 300. There's quite a bit going here on that portion of it. Pitching staff wise, their starting pitcher Behringer, he's pitching really well. He has a 1.68 ERA. Like, their pitching staff seems to be working out pretty well for them on that aspect of it. So I don't think Milwaukee's as dangerous as they have been in years past. Realistically, the RailCats lost to them on school day games that went into extra innings that could have gone either way. So this series is going to be interesting to see how this one's going to wrap up. I will probably have, if you're listening all the way through this, the RailCats Quick Minute, I will probably have both of those posted from the weekend, probably after this podcast, but it's gonna be like kind of back to back just with the weekend I had, and the weekends are gonna be difficult to get to. Looking at this week, the RailCats Quick Minutes, with them being at home, are gonna be a little bit rough to try and do. I'll try and figure something out, because I'll probably be there at Tuesday's game, Wednesday game, Thursday I close, Friday I have to spend Father's Day with my father, because Saturday we're going to a Kenny Chesney concert at Soldier Field, and then on Sunday I have to work. So yeah, not a lot of RailCats baseball that's going to be going on my end of things. So I want to try to keep doing the daily content, but if I just can't get to it, I just won't be able to get to it. So I'm sorry on that front of it, but that's how it's going to work. But yeah, that'll wrap it up for me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your evening, whenever you're watching this. And go Cats.
The 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike three. Wrap this one up in green and white.